Khaman Maluach is the player most commonly mocked to the Raptors at the 2025 draft. He is the player that appears most often in the comment section of my videos with Raptors fans wanting to draft him. And it is extremely clear that he is a perfect fit for this Raptors roster. But is he the right player to select at 9th overall? Let's get into it. This is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to providing you with Toronto Raptors content and videos like this, where we look at some of the top prospects the Raptors select at 9th overall and learn everything about them. If you enjoy this one along the way, then make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content just like it. What we're going to do in today's video, we're going to learn exactly who Khaman Maluach is. We're going to go over what he did in his season with Duke. We're going to go over his strengths, his weaknesses, finish off with a player comparable before deciding if he is the right selection for the Raptors at 9th overall. And it's very clear out the gate that Khaman Maluach, like I said, is a perfect fit for this Raptors roster. But we know that the draft isn't just about fit. So along the way, we're going to learn if he has the right capabilities for that selection to be warranted 9th overall. Because the Raptors right now, the roster, there aren't a lot of clear gaps in the team. I mean, at point guard, there's Emmanuel Quickley. There is Jamal Shed. At the shooting guard position, my God, there's a catalog of players there. RJ Barrett will likely start in the quote-unquote shooting guard position, given the current roster state, but you have Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, Ochai Agbaji, who technically is a shooting guard. But if you want to lump him into the forwards, I mean, that's an area of the team that might be even more crowded with players fighting to get in positions beyond Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. But where there is that opening to be had is certainly in the center position. The Raptors have Jakob Poeltl, who is a fantastic starting center. But beyond that, it depends if you consider Jonathan Mobo to be a center. I would probably prefer not to classify him as such, but kind of needs must with his current team. And there's also Colin Castleton, who probably will struggle to make the roster this upcoming season. There is a very, very clear need for a backup center, and a very, very clear need for a backup center who can protect the rim. And as we're going to learn in this video, Khaman Maluach can do just that. It has fantastic size to go with it. 7'2" and measured at a 7'7" wingspan at the combine. Clearly a level of size that is intriguing, and clearly a level of upside that is extremely intriguing for a player who won't even be 19 years old when his name is called on draft night. We'll just have to wait and find out if it is the Raptors that are calling his name. But there's a lot of reasons to suggest it could be the Raptors that are the ones going after him. And a lot of those reasons appear a little bit beyond just the statistics and the box score. The box score is semi-impressive here. Overall, like, this was an incredibly talented Duke team that was led by Cooper Flagg, but Khaman Maluach found his role. 8.6 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, which might be a little bit lower than you think it would be for somebody of his size, which I'll explain a little bit more in just a second. And the same can be said about his blocks at 1.3 per game, which I'll explain a little bit more in just a second. But his field goal percentage at 71.2 is fantastic. I mean, he's right there at the rim a lot, so you would expect the numbers to be in this range, and they are, which is good. And I think what's very promising for the player is the fact that his free throw percentage is 76.6. Sometimes the concern with a big of this nature who is more paint-oriented is that they can't shoot free throws. Maybe they can't hang on the court in the late stages of a game. Khaman Maluach kind of puts that to bed with the free throw percentage, which does indicate as well that the shooting form exists to maybe space his game out a little bit more. Overall, true shooting percentage, difficult to really say for a guy who's not taking threes, or a lot of threes, I guess, but 73.6% overall true shooting percentage is something you can absolutely be confident to work with. But like I said, the impact does go beyond just the box score. The strengths, obviously, the biggest one, it's that size and it's the length. I mean, like I hate to put it as simply as this, but no, you cannot teach 7'2", 7'7" wingspan. That is something that immediately alongside the athleticism he has for his size, like, he's not super athletic. His combine results, in fact, were a little bit worse in the athletic categories than maybe people thought it would be, including myself, but decent athleticism for his size, which just raises his floor quite a bit. Like, there is a lot that he's able to produce just by having the athleticism for being 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan, but he is a very good defender. Excellent in rim protection, and is very clearly showing signs of being able to anchor a defense. Again, that just goes what I'm saying about the fact that there's going to be a pretty high floor on the defensive end of the court. Now, Offensively, that might be where some more things need to be worked on, but his shot conversion, as we saw, was very impressive with the percentages that we saw. Big time lob threat with a big time catch radius. Now, Raptors may not have the best players to completely maximize that sort of lob threat, but I can't really recall a player who has fit into that mold the Raptors had for a while, so absolutely can be brought into the system and coached into the system. We saw with the few free throw percentages, there's some shooting potential there. Now, it's going to take a lot of work to get there, but there's at least the flashes there to say that even if he can stretch his game out to the mid-range, just get himself out of the paint a little bit more, that's going to help his game, and that is going to help the team. Overall, hard worker who has improved astronomically over the last 2 years and even in just the last year. Clearly, there is talent here, and if you can harness it, it is absolutely monstrous upside that he can give you. And I said with a pretty good floor, but there still are weaknesses that you do have to worry about, starting off with the self-creation. Yes, he's a big-time lob threat, but doesn't really have a polished game in the post. Can he create himself a shot in the low post, posting up opposition defenders? Doesn't really seem like that's there right now. Definitely more raw on the offensive side of the floor, and there's some work that needs to be done there. Not the most sound ball handler, though you may not be asking him to handle the ball very much for your team. And defensively, good defensive anchor, but when asked to defend pick and rolls, when asked to maybe go up on the perimeter, his foot speed can be a little bit lacking. Again, we saw the athletic stats from the combine, again, weren't the best, weren't what some people were expecting them to be, so there could be some issues there. And stamina-wise, it was tough for him to really stay on the floor for extremely long periods of time in college. Now, the good thing is he's coming into the Raptors, if he does get drafted by the Raptors, as the backup center, so it's not as big of a deal, and it's something you can work on over the few years you would want to shape him as a backup center before conversations are had about him starting, because this is not a player that I think is really going to be going anywhere realistically where he's going to be starting center out the gate. That's completely fine for him to fit in that backup role for the Raptors. We saw that the rebounding numbers and the block numbers were a little bit lower than expected, but the way it's been framed here is that he spent a good amount of time defending outside of the paint. As good as he is defending the paint, he spent a good amount of time defending outside of the paint. So he wasn't always right in those positions to get those rebounds. First of all, it could be higher. It does leave a little bit to be desired, but that is something that has been said about Maluach, where wasn't always occupying that paint position to get those rebounds. And in terms of the block rate, like if you look at some of his older footage, like, you look at some of his footage with South Sudan, for example, he was jumping, trying to block everything, and it made him a little bit foul heavy, which was a bit of a problem, but he's got such length and such size. Like, his standing reach is almost that of Victor Wembanyama, and it's even a little bit taller than what Rudy Gobert's standing reach is. So he really does a fantastic job of altering shots, even when he's not getting those block statistics. And if it can be refined a little bit more, those block numbers will elevate. But in the end, Duke played it a little bit safer. He spent more of his time at the rim on his feet, not jumping for things to stay out of foul trouble, and he was still able to alter shots, which isn't quite showcased with the block numbers per game. Overall, trying to figure out what the best player comparable is here. I don't think you should put too much stock into these player comparables. I try to make myself come up with one for a little bit of fun for the videos, but the player comparable that I see here is Mitchell Robinson. And, say what you want about a player like Mitchell Robinson. He was massive for the New York Knicks, even in the most recent rendition of the NBA playoffs. Like, really changed how far they could potentially go in the playoffs by starting to play him a little bit more often. The key here is that, okay, Maluach brings that fantastic rim protection. He brings that defensive anchor presence that was brought, for example, by Mitchell Robinson. A tidy finisher on the inside who may not be the best at creating their own shot. But one of the keys here is that Mitchell Robinson shoots like well under 50% from the line. Khaman Maluach, as we saw in college, shooting above 75% and opportunities to get that number even higher. So a lot of impact could be had in the NBA. And I think that what will take Khaman Maluach to the next level, because some people right now might be watching thinking, ooh, 9th overall pick, and you're comparing it to Mitch Robinson. Again, don't read too much into these comparisons. Just hopefully a general idea of what sort of player you can expect, but what is going to bring Maluach to the next level as an NBA player is going to be a little bit of work on the foot speed and stamina to be able to compete in more switchable scenarios, maybe having to guard the point guard at times in pick and roll scenarios, which he did an okay job at with Duke, but it can stand to improve. But I think the biggest swing for his game will be if he can start to spread his game out on offense. Doesn't even need to be shooting threes, which he's had attempts at doing so. He's had, like, I wouldn't even go as far as to call it moderate success, but for a guy you would expect to not be able to shoot at all, we'll call it moderate success. But even if we can spread that game into the mid-range, like if we can even get this to like 16-footers where he's knocking down twos in those areas to a consistent degree, all of a sudden now we're getting into more Jared Allen sort of conversations. We're getting into all-star center conversation with Khaman Maluach. With the monster upside on both ends of the floor and already like a pretty sound foundation to compete on the defensive end already, this seems like a perfect fit for the Raptors right now to just fill in that backup point guard position. And I think the upside is absolutely worth gambling on. This is a fantastic talent. There's a ton of upside. He's super young. I think the Raptors have the development team to really harness his game and take him to the next level. They have a perfect situation where he can play behind Jakob Poeltl for the time being. And for me, like if he's available at 9, I'll make my big board closer to the date of the draft. But if he's available at 9, I struggle to see somebody else being available where I'd say we'll actually pass on Khaman Maluach at this point. I agree with the majority of the comments that have talked about Maluach being the biggest prize for the Raptors. The hope for me is that he's available at 9. Yes, he is the most commonly mocked player to the Raptors, because if anybody does a mock draft, or typically if a person does a mock draft where Maluach is available at 9, they are putting him with the Raptors. The issue is a lot of people are considering, could he go 6th overall to the Washington Wizards? Could he go 7th overall to the New Orleans Pelicans? Could he go 8th overall to the Brooklyn Nets? If he does, the Raptors would have to look elsewhere. But again, if he's available at 9, I'd be all in on getting Khaman Maluach at this point. How about you?